Hey everyone, is Bitcoin's price stuck at $107,000, or is something going on behind the scenes and in the background? The answer is a lot's going on behind the scenes. Let's talk about it. Okay, so first off, Bitcoin has been at $107,000 for about 4 or 5 days now, and it's been around somewhere between $100,000 and $111,000 for what feels like months. It has been a good portion of the last 6 months. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, anytime the price of any asset, it doesn't matter if it's one of the Magnificent Seven stocks, which is Apple, Amazon, Tesla, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and Nvidia. I think I got all 7. Anyway, it doesn't matter what it is. If something goes up very quickly, then it takes time for the market to digest it. And we need to talk about what's happening actually behind the scenes when the market is digesting a price move like that. What's happening is the asset is changing from the hands of people who held it earlier at a lower price to people who are buying it now at a higher price. It's called the realized capitalization. So you got to understand the difference between the market capitalization, which is called the market cap, and the realized capitalization, which is called the realized cap. Okay, so the market capitalization of any asset is the price at which it last traded hands. So the very last Bitcoin that someone sold to one person or another was at $107,300 when I started this video. Okay, but not every Bitcoin has been bought or sold at that price. In fact, some of the very earliest Bitcoin have never been sold at any price. So the realized capitalization of that very early Bitcoin is $0. Some of the Bitcoin I own, I bought for $6,400. The realized capitalization of that Bitcoin is $6,400 because I've never sold it. So most of the Bitcoin I've ever bought, I've never sold. And so I carry it at a price that is significantly lower than today's price. Now, every time I use my Coinbase debit card, the realized capitalization of whatever Bitcoin I'm spending jumps up to the current price. So the realized capitalization of any asset is always significantly below the current market rate. But what matters is, where is it going? What's happening with that realized capitalization? And then the answer is, with Bitcoin, it's going up, and it's climbing and climbing and climbing, because at times of chopsolidation or consolidation, whatever you want to call it, what's actually happening behind the scenes is people that have held the asset for a long time are selling it, a portion of their holdings, to new people. Now you might think, that's annoying. I wish everybody who had ever owned Bitcoin would stop selling it, so the price would have to go up. Well, the truth is, you're going to do the exact same thing. The $10,000 of Bitcoin, or $50,000 of Bitcoin, or $1,000 of Bitcoin, however much Bitcoin you own right now, when that has increased in value by a factor of 10, or a factor of 5, or a factor of 20, you're going to be feeling rich, or richer than you are right now. And what people do when they feel more wealthy is they spend some. So if you buy $10,000 of Bitcoin and it goes up by a factor of 5 over the next 5 years, you're going to be sitting on $50,000. And you will find it irresistible to spend a little bit of that taking your family to Disney World, or going to Universal Studios, or taking some other nice vacation or something like that. In my case, even though I am a net buyer of Bitcoin, all the way up till I reached 100% earlier this year, and I've made 2 purchases since then, one for $14,000, the other for, I think it was like $11,000. I forget what it was. Anyway, I posted them to Facebook. I made 2 larger purchases, but otherwise I'm buying Bitcoin every 2 weeks with my paycheck. So I've been a net buyer of Bitcoin, but let's assume I wasn't. Let's assume that whatever it was, $14,000 and $11,000 or whatever it was, had not come out of nowhere, enabling me to buy more Bitcoin. Well, someone like me up at $107,000 feels like, for example, I can afford a Tesla. So I bought a Tesla. Now, in my case, I financed the Tesla, which means I did not have to sell Bitcoin. I just have to sell a little bit of Bitcoin once a month for 5 years. But if I had bought it just outright, that would have been sell pressure on the marketplace. I actually did buy outright a generator for my house. So now my electricity will stop constantly going off. And that was $20,000 for a whole house generator that can handle 3 air conditioners and a Tesla charger and all that. It was $20,000 for a Kohler 26 kilowatt hour or something like that. I don't know what it was. Anyway, but if I had just, let's assume I was not a net buyer of Bitcoin. I was just an early OG Bitcoiner, which I'm not. I'm 2017 Bitcoin, which is later. But everybody feels late, including the people buying right now, including me in 2017. Let's assume I had some Bitcoin I had bought for an average price in 2018 and 2017 of $10,000, which was around the price I was spending back then, maybe about $9,000. Well, once you're up 10x on that money, suddenly you feel like you can afford a generator. And you think, okay, I'm willing to part with a little bit of my Bitcoin stash to buy a generator. Well, that creates sell pressure. Well, every time the market goes up, people who have held Bitcoin a long time decide to part with a little bit of their stash to improve the lives of themselves and their family. They go on vacations, they buy generators, they buy Teslas, they do all the things people do. Now, I live a pretty modest lifestyle, but if Bitcoin was, below $30,000 per coin, I would not be driving a Tesla. Because even though I could technically afford it, I just wouldn't feel good about it. So every time the price rises to a new level, as Bitcoin did back in November, it takes a while for everybody who wants to liquidate just a little bit of the Bitcoin they've been sitting on for a long time to liquidate that Bitcoin, and then the price continues to go up. And that will always be the case, and that will be the case with your Bitcoin as well. So maybe you liquidate a little bit of your Bitcoin at 500,000, maybe it's $1 million, but for people who bought Bitcoin at $100 or $1,000 or even $10,000, some of them are liquidating a little bit of it right now. And that's actually a good thing, because if they weren't, then you would be stuck buying the Bitcoin you own at a much higher price than whatever price you paid for it. So in my case, I'm glad back in 2017 and 2018, and then subsequently in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025, which were all the years I was buying Bitcoin. I should have been buying Bitcoin in 2019 and 2020. I wasn't. I should have been, my bad. I hadn't done the work to understand it. But I'm glad people back then were selling Bitcoin to make their lives of themselves and their families better, because otherwise I would have had to pay a much higher price. And the same with you. You should be thankful that those people are selling Bitcoin now, because it's the only reason that you got to buy Bitcoin at whatever price you paid for it, and not a price that is radically higher. So what happens over time? Well, what happens over time, for example, yesterday, $40 billion of Bitcoin changed hands. $40 billion changed hands, much of it from people who had held it a long time to people who were new joining the train. Today, 30, because it's the weekend, the volumes are always lower on weekends. Today, in the last 24 hours, $30 billion of Bitcoin changed hands. So it's changing hands from people who have held it for a long time, mostly, to people who are buying it for the first time, or expanding their purchasing for the first time. And that is the way money always works. And that will be the way it continues to work until everyone in the entire world exclusively uses Bitcoin as their only currency. And when that happens, the price will have stabilized somewhere between $1 million and $21 million. Pretty much every Bitcoiner I know in the world thinks Bitcoin goes north of $1 million. The most bullish projections right now are $21 million, which is Michael Saylor. He's generally got the most bullish forecasts. So somewhere between more than $1 million and $21 million per coin, it will level out. The world will use exclusively Bitcoin as money, and the value will go up about 3% per year, because 3% per year is about how much humans get better at making stuff. So if you have a fixed monetary supply of 21 million and people keep getting better at making stuff, eventually, or not eventually, but the whole time that is happening, the money increases in purchasing power by 3% per year, because that you can just buy more stuff. There's 3% more stuff you can buy with the same money in the world. So that's what's happening. If the price is frustrating to you and you think, why are we stuck at $107,000? We're only stuck in the current price. The realized capitalization keeps climbing as the people who own those 21 million Bitcoin keeps changing, and the old people get off the bus with a little bit of their stash. New people get on the bus and start the journey. And eventually we run out of Bitcoin that people who have held it for a long time want to sell. So in my case, all All I've wanted in the last couple of years was a generator and to drive a Tesla. So I'm good. Like, I don't have any major purchases on my horizon. Many OG Bitcoiners are in the same way. They've made the adjustments over the last 6 or 7 months to adjust their lifestyle to buy whatever they want to buy. And then they decide they want to hold on to the rest. And as soon as enough people do that, the price has to increase because adoption continues to go up. It's just a matter of time. So just be patient, load up on whatever Bitcoin you want to own before the next big upswing, and enjoy your journey. I'm here to help in any way I can. Thanks.